and welcome to the Truth and Data podcast, where we discuss a new topic in digital forensics each week. I'm Jessica.
I'm Kim.
I'm Debbie.
And so let's get into this week's topic. This week, we are talking about, unfortunately, sextortion. And this is a crime that is happening on digital devices. And we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We'll talk about from a digital forensics perspective, but we're also going to try to give resources and what to do steps if you or someone you love becomes a victim. And I'm really happy we're talking about this. I got a case call the other day, as we do here at Hexordia, and it was about a 13-year-old victim of sextortion who had taken their own life because of the extremity of sextortion. And obviously, this is a crime that's increased. It has changed its motivations, and so let's start by talking about what is sextortion. So I don't know if Kim or Debbie, if you want to kind of just explain what constitutes sextortion.
I mean, I'll take that one. So, sextortion is a form of child exploitation, but it also happens to adults.
Definitely happens to adults.
Where a person is threatened or blackmailed, most often with the possibility of sharing intimate images with, online with their contact list or their friends list or something like that, by a person who demands either additional sexual content or monetary compensation. Or sometimes they are trying to get them to meet for sexual activity. They're basically blackmailing them using their intimate images. I first came into contact with this particular crime type when I was working, in law enforcement, and it started out as sexual predators getting children to send them images, and then, often pretending to be someone that they're not, but they received these intimate images, and then they requested more, and they were using it for their own sexual gratification. And then it became a monetary, and now it has exploded into people being blackmailed for monetary compensation.
It's really interesting because as this crime has evolved, as you're alluding to, it's changed from being a crime of grooming to a crime of financial exploitation.
Right.
And it's also, there is a third aspect. So let's talk about all the ways this crime can take place. It could be child grooming for child sexual exploitation in order to gain favor of either more illicit imagery or meeting for sexual purposes or human trafficking. Mm-hmm. The second case is this extortion, financial extortion, which does happen to both young people and to adults. By the way, this is a crime that's affecting men and women equally. We see this happening to men and women according to some of the statistics, which we'll share.
Right.
The third motivation is revenge porn. Sometimes these are actual consensual images that somebody will share about their ex, and they are also used in bullying. We see this also as a form of cyberbullying, where intimate images are either shared or threatened to be shared. So we've really got these four different motivation cases: bullying, grooming, financial exploitation, blackmail, and revenge with a former intimate partner. And it's really fascinating. Kim, would you mind explaining a little bit, just so people know what grooming is? Because I don't know if everyone who listens to this podcast is familiar with that crime type.
Sure. So grooming is where an individual is trying to get closer or to be closer with oftentimes a child. So they will try to gain favor with them. They will, it'll start out small, usually something very small, just a small little, interaction or token or some kind of a nicety or something. And then it just continues to go on, and continues to grow in the more they do for them, oftentimes the more close that they get, and the more the child will open up. And so that ends up being, ultimately a relationship, or some type of a relationship that's grown into something that it wasn't before. So that process in between there is what we call grooming.
Also, a lot of times that I've seen it, it involves normalization of explicit or sexual behavior, where the child is is meant to think that this is normal, in the type of relationship that has been cultivated, right? It's a really vicious and mental and disgusting and disturbing. And with the advent of cameras, this has become readily available, and sometimes is used as a threat of, well, now I have this imagery of you. Maybe they got the child to send a nude image. Now that I have this image of you, I will release it unless you now partake in more imagery or sexual favors. So it's called sextortion because this is any form of extortion that involves sex. And it's just interesting that the motivations and reasons have evolved over time. So this becomes a subject in digital forensics because we're the ones who are examining these cases. And a lot of times you might think that this is something that's law enforcement only, but the other week, so March 21st, I was staying at a hotel. And in hotels, they often have USA Today. And what do I see on the front page as I'm walking through the lobby is sextortion and the cost of recovery services. And this was actually I would say a negative article about a forensics company that they were saying was extorting the victims of sextortion by promising services, and not really fulfilling those services, and doing this at a very large fee, to the point where some of these folks were paying $20,000 to $30,000 to attempt to have it resolved. And I want to be really clear that that digital forensics examiners and digital forensics companies, both privately and publicly, can help. So let's start at the division line of when do you call law enforcement versus when do you hire somebody externally? What do you think people should do in the event that they are threatened with a sextortion situation? And this can happen in different environments, right? Known people, not known.
Oh, sure. I think if you're a minor, most definitely go speak to your parents or a trusted adult. That's your very first thing, is to let them know, and then hopefully they're going to contact law enforcement to be able to try to get to the bottom of it. So I think the other thing that's interesting, though, is that you talked about these couple of different ways, that different types of extortion, but there may be, that the child at first, doesn't necessarily know, or they think that maybe it is someone that's close by. They may think that it's someone that is near them, in close proximity to them, or maybe someone posing as being someone.
Or they may think it's another peer who is actually romantically interested in them, because this crime is hitting middle schoolers and high schoolers at an alarming rate.
Absolutely. And this could very well be someone who doesn't know this child at all.
Right.
This could be someone that, this is just one of, the many people, unfortunately, that they're trying to contact, that they're trying to do this scam on. And so the child at first, when they start to do this explanation to their parents, it may seem as though it's something that's not necessarily. So that's why it's really important. Talk to them, tell them everything, share everything with the parent, and then share everything with law enforcement, so that you're able to get to the bottom of it, to see really what's the source of this.
There are so many other elements, because you have elements, regardless of if this is, and let's be real clear, this is something that affects children, this affects adults, this affects people who are meeting people on dating sites and are maybe being elicited for pictures. I'm going to make a blanket statement. Gentlemen, if somebody asks you for a picture of your nether regions, most women actually aren't interested in that. I don't mean to be blanket, but you're probably being scammed. If someone you don't know is asking for a picture of your nether regions and you've never met them, you probably shouldn't see it, because it might be a fake sextortion scam. And it just happens to
Absolutely.
happen. Kids, young people, teenagers. I have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old myself. And we meet people online, and the it is very possible to discover and feel, especially our teens today went through COVID and went through this period where they started
Mm-hmm.
developing their social relationships digitally and no longer in person. So it is very easy for people to now develop emotional relationships, not a psychologist hashtag, but with people they've never met in person. And
Right.
they may be motivated emotionally, sexually, etc., to share these images. Number one, if this happens to you, you did nothing wrong. I
Right.
think one of the biggest motivators of this crime and the reason that it is gained so much, I mean, Nick Meck said that they had over, what, 10,000 reports in 2022, but then in 2023 they had over 26,000. So, 150% increase year over year. Um, the reason is because people pay because of shame. People pay because those illicit images, they're afraid of the fact that they may harm their career, etc. And then once they pay once, they become a target again and again. To be honest, it's very similar to ransomware in this regard. Um, I personally believe that the thing that should be done is to block and report.
Yes.
Block and report. Do not continue the conversation. Block and report. It is unlikely that imagery will actually be released because they really are just looking for the financial gain and they're going to move on to the next victim. That's when it's financially motivated. In revenge sextortion, I think revenge porn is in a different category
Right.
in terms of if the imagery would actually be released. Um, so, I mean, I think we're all in agreement, block and report,
Yes.
especially if this is on social media. So, what happens if it wasn't just a threat? What happens when it is a revenge porn or it is somebody who then sends or shares these images? What steps can a victim take?
To me, similar. I would still block and report. There are
Mm-hmm.
states that have laws about revenge porn. Not
Yep.
everyone, not every state does, but they do. And we're going to link some resources, but there are resources even as an adult where you can have your images where someone will help you get them taken down. The problem becomes whoever has those images, or if they were copied, they can always be re-uploaded again. So they're, block and report, save everything. Don't delete your accounts, don't delete the images, because if law enforcement is going to make a case, they are going to need those things. I have had since I left law enforcement, I have had friends, colleagues reach out to me at 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning, where their teenage sons were in this situation and they did not know what to do.
I've had the same. Yeah. So,
Yeah. There are resources online and that will sort of lead you through really what you should do. But same thing as an adult. I don't think it's much different as an adult, other than the fact that you likely know the person who is blackmailing.
maybe some of this is happening on their dating apps, right? So
Yes.
some of this is not happening with people that although it's more likely. So one of those what so in there's two things here. If you were a child, you can go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Your parent can help you with this. And if I won't say your parent, I'll say a trusted safe guardian. We don't know who the trusted safe guardians are in your life. So go to a
Right.
trusted safe adult who can help you with the reporting. And the great thing about NCMEC is they will reach out and help you with take it down requests. If you're
Right.
not a child, you probably have to go through that take it down procedure by each social media or site. Um, and you're going to have to go through those. There are some resources that tell you how to do that, and we will link these in the show notes, absolutely. And there's been some really great talks, but I think that there's a couple of elements you need to do. Number one, you need to report it. You need to report it to law enforcement. Block and
I
report,
agree.
right? Number two, you need to do whatever take it down requests are needed. Number 3, you have to take care of your mental health. This is not my area of expertise, but unfortunately, too many of these cases, we come in when somebody has already been very, very devastated. And like I mentioned, sometimes it is after someone's taken their own life. And because of that, I think we have to include in any strategy for dealing with this that mental health resources are sought out for the victim, because this is an intensely emotional crime. And that's what they're feeding on.
That's what they're planning for. That's what they're planning on.
So how is this affected? So, and we've actually seen some legislation happening. There's now, there's work on a bipartisan bill called the Takedown Act, and there's a lot of work happening in terms of the legal perspective. And speaking about the evolving legal perspective and the evolving technology perspective, nowadays these images don't even need to be taken because AI can be involved. What do you think or know about the intersection of generated imagery and sextortion?
So I do know it's on the rise, and you could see it all over. If you look at it on social media, or if you look at it, just in a Google search, it's out there. This is happening to people, and has been happening for a long time. Actually, it's actually interesting that very similar scams like this. They've become more popular recently, but I remember 7-8 years ago where we first started seeing people getting these links where it would say, hey, I see this picture of you, whatever. And a lot of them didn't have anything in it that was them, but it may have had something illicit. But then some of them did, even back then, where they were already starting to, kind of, do this, fake imagery of a particular person to get them to do this and respond to it. So it's been around. This isn't actually new. It's just gained more popularity, and the AI is better now. It's so much easier for these folks to do. It's so much easier for them to do it, and it is so automated. And if these are folks that are only in this for the financial gain of it, where they don't know you personally, where there really isn't any kind of like this grooming attempt or anything, where it's just something, just kind of a cold call, right? Just something that, for whatever reason, they've just ended up, your profiles ended up in their crosshairs along with many others, and they've created this, and now you and thousands, millions others end up with this, entreaty to interact with them so that they won't, post these supposedly. And it's something that's fake of you, but you didn't take it in the first place. It's funny. I used to always, when I would speak to young groups of folks, when I was working, I would say that I've got a surefire way to never have your nudes put on the internet. Don't take them.
But that's not the case. That's not
right.
the case anymore. You can't even say don't take nudes, right? Like,
I know, because they
can be created.
And that was the deal, right? We used to tell people, you don't want your sex tape released, don't make a sex tape. Never trust your partner that relationship is forever, and don't make that sex tape, right? And now that's not even what's needed. So let's talk about, we talked about what to do in the immediacy. Block, report, right? Block it, report it to law enforcement, and then go ahead and take the steps for take it down, get mental health resources. There's actually another thing that people need to ensure they're doing, and it should be the first thing to our front of mind in the field that we're in as digital evidence and digital forensics professionals, and that's retaining evidence. Sometimes people are very apt to delete things. Don't delete it, keep it. And the reason we need you to keep it is because in a forensics examination, we can actually determine in many instances by looking at metadata and using advanced forensics tools. There's for the forensics examiners listening to this, I love for looking at things for the video images, if there's actual magnet verify in terms of looking at the file system structure and determining if something was generated, what the last tool to touch it was. Really, really helpful in investigations. But there is so much data from the communications with the person who you're blocking, from the actual imagery that you may have, from the posts that you may know that exist, from the information
The
they're asking
account.
you to share accounts, accounts both that like social media accounts of the other person, but
Yes.
also the accounts that they might be asking you to send money to
The
or wire
financial
money to, the
accounts,
financial
the
accounts, the
Bitcoin
crypto, the
or
Bitcoin.
yes.
So all of that is evidence, and you need to save it. You need to not delete it. You need to retain that information. You may be asked to give consent for forensic collection of your device, and that actually allows forensics examiners to aid in the investigation, which may lead this perpetrator to stop hurting you and other people. And the other reason you need to stop it is if you don't stop it and you pay, and you see paying as a way of stopping it, you are going to be shared as a victim, as somebody who can be targeted again and again. It won't be
Right.
just once. And I hate to say that. I mean, I can't guarantee it, but the likelihood is you will be victimized multiple times, and they will take you for everything they can. That's what they're there to do. But it is important to retain that. You may not want to, but it is important if there's going to be an investigation to retain it. And it is important for us as forensics examiners to follow the typical procedures we need to do to preserve early to ensure that that data is preserved. I I think that that's just the fifth component to how to react
Yes.
with an incident of sextortion, and that it is our responsibility to try to assist and help in these cases. Um, uh, yeah. If your case involves a minor child and you are a parent or you are a guardian or you are that child, you need to report to law enforcement. It is a crime, regardless of where in the United States you are. And I'm sorry, I can't speak to the laws outside the United States. If you are an adult, the second they're asking for money um, for you to do something, that is also a crime, right? And
Right.
I think it's important for us to realize too that these crimes of extortion, as awful as they can actually, depending on where you are in the laws of where you are, and they can actually blossom into some other type of a crime,
absolutely.
which would make that digital evidence even more important, and could make for potentially a heftier sentence, or um, something that they may need to have to deal with. So
Right.
for us, from a digital forensics perspective, though, that's even more important for us. So if, for example, let's say that somebody did go ahead, if this is an underage person, and they went ahead and gave them something to get those pictures,
Mm-hmm.
then that's totally different than just saying, hey, I've got a picture and I'm going to, give me more, or I will give it to someone else, or I'll send it to all your family or whatever. That's different. So if they've already given them something and paid them for this, so that's a different crime. So I think that's important for people to realize that this can get complicated, and that digital evidence is even more important in that respect.
So I want to share something that's interesting from some research that Debbie had shared with me that came from Snapchat. And Snapchat has this on their privacy page, and we'll share links for this. But I think statistics make this not just colloquial, not just us talking, about cases that we've seen, not just pure anecdotes. And from the survey that was done, and this is of Gen Z, so this is of young people, these are of
Mm-hmm.
teenagers and preteens who use Snapchat. They use Snapchat, if you like it or not. Latest findings show that, and I'm reading directly from values.snap.com from their research. 17% of respondents who admitted to sharing or distributing intimate imagery. So 17%. That's a lot. And that's who admitted
Which
to
is
it.
a lot.
63% of those who shared the imagery said they were lied to by the perpetrator. And 58% said they lost control of the material that was sent. And this is on the app that's supposed to be private because it disappears,
It disappears.
but it doesn't. Those under 18 who shared intimate imagery were particularly vulnerable. and this goes along with what we were saying, 76% said they were lied to by the abuser, and 66% said they lost control of the imagery. So I think that this is very large numbers. And if you think your children aren't being affected by this, not necessarily producing their own, but 47% of their Gen Z respondents said they had been involved with intimate imagery at some point, right? So that could be porn, that could be themselves, that could be receiving it. It is
being asked for
being
it.
asked for it. 13 to 15-year-olds. So we're talking about young teens. 23% said they had been asked to share. That's nearly a quarter. That's nearly 1 in 4 kids between 13 and 15. By the time they get to 16 to 17, that rises to 31% of them. Almost a third of them have been asked to share imagery. And by the time they get to 18 and 19, late teens, young adults, and 20 to 24-year-olds, they get to 43% of them have been asked to share intimate imagery. Our kids are being asked to share this imagery. Our children do not understand that when they share this with somebody who they think is a trusted person, at that moment they don't understand that that imagery could be around forever, and
Right.
that imagery could be used to cause them additional harm.
I love the fact that Snapchat was talking to actual teens, asking them, what has your experience been? Because I think it gives us as adults, we see the results, but what is their perspective? What do they know? And I'm actually looking for it right now, but there was a study done, and I forgot. I wish hopefully I'll find it and put it in the show notes. But it was a study that showed that teens and young adults are now becoming more skeptical about what they see online.
Good.
And yes. And I was like, and the stats were really, it was comforting in a way, but they are realizing, even more so than some adults, that everything that they see online is not actually true. And it doesn't have to do with just sextortion, but misinformation and disinformation. And, I'd like to think that maybe the message is getting to them. I do know that we have a long way to go, but there are some young adults and young, older teens that are becoming more skeptical. I know when I was raising my kids who are now young adults, I didn't have very many rules about online, except don't talk to anyone that you don't know personally, and not everyone is who you think they are. Those are like, if you teach them some very basics, and then obviously just don't take nude photos.
Yeah, don't sext.
No, yes.
Yeah. But again, with AI, there have
yes,
been
it's a
instances
whole new world now.
Where this has happened, and some of the really brave young people who have come forth in front of Congress to testify in support of the Take It Down Now Act. We're talking about young girls, freshmen, sophomore girls, and boys, who AI is being used to put them into illicit positions and images. There are some great resources. I would like to just make a shout out. Like, I think it's great that we're recognizing Snapchat for being a responsible provider in terms of providing information. There are other groups like Thorn. There's obviously the NCMEC site. The statistics are absolutely alarming. And when I look through, again, Debbie pulled all our statistics for this. And when I looked through them, I was aware of it because of what comes through in terms of work. But the statistics are alarming. And remember, most people don't report, right? So if we're
absolutely,
that means that this is an incredibly larger problem. So there are resources out there. There are resources for talking to your kids. There are resources for what to do if you are a victim. There are resources on how to take it down. And, I'm just really concerned with the AI element, because now, even if not, and I'm going to make something really clear. If you took an illicit image, you are a victim. It is not your fault. Okay. But now, even without taking an image yourself, now there could
Right.
be this AI implication. And this is scary. Um, the FBI has a great post with statistics as well about how this is targeting minors. Again, it'll be in the show notes. Um, and I think that I'm glad that we have this opportunity here on the Truth and Data podcast to talk about this. So I think the final thing is from the forensics element, what I'd hope we could discuss is what can be found by digital forensics examiners. What is the actual digital evidence that's relevant in these cases? I think it's important for people to understand that there is things that can be determined. So Kim, Debbie, where do you think an examiner fits in this picture?
I think first you're probably going to, if you're the examiner, you're going to work very closely. If you're also not the investigator, you're going to work very closely with the investigator to be able to have that conversation to find out what platform are we talking about. Let's take a good look from a forensic perspective of that application, and then maybe they've also talked on other platforms as well. Sometimes they'll switch people around, as we know. Also, if there's any kind of a financial incentive or anything along those lines, then we need to look at those applications. But whatever apps that may have been interacted with this individual, then also we need to talk about the pictures themselves, right? Is it truly, if it's a picture that you have taken, then this is where it's going to be helpful for you to have those pictures, so that indeed we would be able to potentially do what needed to happen in order to go through the take it down process. So the pictures themselves, as embarrassing as it may be, trust me, it's okay. It happens.
And
It happens.
this sounds weird. I had a case recently where somebody had requested a female examiner,
Mhm.
and this was an interesting note to me because and I was like, well, um, note that forensics examiners, we have ethics. We stick to our scope, and trust me, we're not interested in your nudes. Have seen more illicit imagery than we would ever want to see in our lives. We're not interested. We're interested in helping you solve the case. And to be honest, we're not looking at the pictures themselves as much as we're looking at the metadata. We are actually looking at the ones and zeros that comprise it in a hex viewer. And I'm just saying this to give safety people. Yes, we do have to see the images, but to be honest, we use a lot of tooling to prevent us and for our welfare from seeing imagery. So we actually use tooling to help reduce our exposure. But I've worked countless cases where, so I see the image for a second. That's not what I care about. I'm actually looking at the metadata. When was it taken? How was it taken? What was the camera? What applications were used to modify or edit this? And that's really our responsibility in being able to track that. What IP addresses were involved? What accounts were involved? Do we have to make other requests to get data from the providers? And then the last thing is especially with the AI element, are the laws keeping up?
So there are, a lot of states are considering artificial intelligence laws, and right now a lot of them are haphazard. It's hard to encompass an entire artificial intelligence piece of legislation. Like, for example, in Georgia, they've enacted AI laws related to elections. They're working on artificial intelligence laws related to, child exploitation, intimate imagery. They are working on those, and I know that that's happening across the state, or I'm sorry, across the country. But that's slow. We know that process moves slowly. And we want them to consult with the proper people. We don't want, so that the legislation is good legislation.
Yeah.
So that's slow, but it is occurring. It has been given some thought, and it is occurring across the country.
That's good. That's the good news, right? Is that as much as the crime is evolving, the response is revolving from a technological perspective, our tooling, our capabilities as forensics examiners, but also the laws are evolving. And I would say, from my opinion, I think the laws are evolving at a pace that I'm actually happy that they're actually working on it, because I feel like in other
Right.
areas of tech, there was no pressure to get the laws to adjust to the new technology, and I'm really excited to see the laws evolving at the pace they are. Of course, it'll never be fast enough, but to really help us be able to support the victims and provide the analysis. Wow, what a great conversation about such an important topic. I hope everyone who's listened has gotten something out of this. We'd love to hear your thoughts. There's great work out there, some great talks. Heather Barnhart of Celebrate's done some great talks. She spoke at RSA. We're going to share all these cool things in the show notes and resources for people, as well as articles and statistics. And just thank you for listening. And we look forward to talking to you next week on the Truth and Data podcast, where we'll tackle another topic. Thanks all.
Bye.